Hi, I'm Miko Peled, and I'm speaking to you from Palestine House of Freedom here in Washington, D.C. Today, I'm sitting and talking with Adnaan Stumo, who has recently returned from a flotilla trying to break the siege on the Gaza concentration camp. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, Miko.
So, why did you go on this flotilla? What were you hoping to achieve by going on the flotilla?
I was hoping to help establish a humanitarian corridor into Gaza, establish a precedent for a vessel or group of vessels getting through the siege, and encourage and maintain a supply line from the sea that would be more difficult for the occupation forces to shut down.
Did you have an expectation that you might make it?
We thought that because we were so much bigger than any of the previous flotillas, we had a chance. We knew it was a relatively slim chance, but there were a lot of unknowns because in recent times there's only been really one or two vessels at a time that have attempted. We, of course, got intercepted at the end of the day, but we had some unexpected gains. Number one, the people all around the world, there were millions of people who rose up, who participated in mass actions against their governments and against their state's complicity in the occupation and the genocide. There were mass shutdowns of ports all across southern Europe. There was a general strike in Italy. The city of Barcelona, which had only ever had up to about 70,000 people marching before, marched with 300,000 people.
In support, so this was all in support of the flotilla.
It was in support of the flotilla and ending the genocide in Gaza, but the flotilla acted as a real focal point to organize much more broadly around the world.
So let me ask you this again. What do you think the objective of the flotilla is? Is there a larger objective? Because there's no realistic expectation that the aid would come in, and there is a realistic expectation that you would be detained and the aid would be confiscated. So what's the objective?
And it is a very expensive operation.
And it's a very expensive operation.
Very expensive.
Especially 40, you said there were 42 vessels and about 500 people.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
And then you said there were several thousand people who were on the shores coordinating and making it possible. So that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. Now, they were all volunteers.
Right.
But there were a lot of costs involved. I mean, buying the boats, supplying the boats, fueling, getting insurance that will allow you to sail into a war zone.
Who paid for all that?
There was a lot of grassroots funding from all the different national delegations. As far as I can tell, doesn't account for all the money that was laid out. I don't know where the rest of it came from.
I'm just not important. Yeah, we don't need to discuss
that.
Captain
there, but I do think that it is important to discuss whether that money could or should be used more efficiently in other places.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I will say is that at a certain scale, they can't intercept us. You know, it did take them 12 hours or so to intercept the 42 boats, and the closest boat, as far as I'm aware, got only 26 miles from the coast of Gaza, so only 14 miles outside territorial waters.
And that's because it took them so long to intercept everyone that one boat actually made it very close.
That's right. Other boats were right behind them. There was a false signal that somehow got sent off from my boat, the Mikeno, probably due to IOF spoofing and jamming of our signal, that somehow threw our signal so it looked like we were actually inside Gaza territorial waters and got only 9 miles offshore. Unfortunately, that wasn't true. We were intercepted about 55 or 60 miles offshore. It's hard to tell because we were getting blasted so hard with water cannons for over an hour that I wasn't really able to check our course very well.
So the investment is not just the money and the hours, but it's also it's a huge sacrifice for the people that are doing it. Of course, you have to purchase the humanitarian aid that you know is very likely to be intercepted and not reach its target. So,
And we're
what is
giving the
is there
gift of all of these boats, of our, of ourselves, throwing ourselves into the hands of
of the
these
apartheid state?
ruthless soldiers who have been training to torture and kill people for many decades.
Is there a larger objective?
There was a marginal objective achieved. I think that if the flotilla breaks through to a number where, and with some specific strategies that we've worked out amongst us as captains from the experience on this interception, we could certainly get
What do you think that number is?
boats through. I think that number is probably in the low hundreds. I think that it would be they would be forced to either start blowing us up from the air seriously, or they don't have the manpower. They don't have the vessels to stop us at that point.
I mean, we know that they shot the USS Liberty. So I mean, we know
That's
that
right.
They
That's
have
right.
They have no problem.
It's a different
They have no
political
problem.
moment for
Yeah,
them.
but I'm just saying, they've done it before.
Now, there are ideas that are out there, which I've been trying to kind of absorb, and I don't have any organizational standing to make any decisions like this, but people have been talking about blocking the British military base on Cyprus and actually landing there and going and disabling those planes and stopping, blocking the runways there. People have been talking about using.
You don't want to tell too much of what the plan.
Yes, but these are out there, and these are.
Okay, yeah.
There's no plans. There's no plans. So
Yeah.
I'm just.
Just
people have been
hypothesizing.
talking about using a flotilla, not necessarily. And I'm not. None of this is endorsed by the Global Sumud Flotilla or anything. This is just me talking about using the flotilla to block military supply ships at sea to the occupation ports on the Mediterranean coast.
So overall, you spent a lot of time. Much of it was hard work, and then you spent time being detained by the apartheid state. Do you think it was worthwhile investment on your part?
Yes.
Considering that you spent all those months prior in Palestine itself doing work on the ground with activists, with some very serious activists.
Yeah.
And now it's likely that you won't be able to go back to Palestine.
I'm not sure about that yet. I'm trying to reach out to some lawyers and figure out if there's actually been a ban, because we didn't get any information or any piece of paper that said we're banned, and I know that they have in the past.
Yeah.
Worth it for me, certainly, because I had a specialist skill set of being a captain, of having a lot of experience in maritime work, that I was able to add and bring to this critical mission at a critical point just before the so-called ceasefire, the reduction of the genocide went into effect. I learned a ton and met a lot of people all around the world, including Mandela Mandela and including Tiago Avila, including Greta, with whom I can now organize and work with on various projects on a more personal basis, with an establishment of trust and confidence. And I also think that there's a real unquantifiable piece of the ripple effect that comes out from all of this. I don't think at the time that this was organized, or certainly at the time that I joined, I had no concept that we would have millions of people blocking ports and shutting down city centers all around the world. I had no concept that there were so many people, even here in the heart of the empire. I mean, churches, folks who I didn't even know, organizing groups that were like center left Democrat groups that have never spoken out about Palestine, that are now organizing hard to get American citizens like Muhammad Ibrahim out of his arbitrary detention in Palestine. And
so if somebody asked you, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if somebody asked you now, I want to go, you think I should? What would you say? How would you caution them? What would you suggest? Would you just say yes, no, maybe?
I think that there will be a lot of people who want to join and want to um, put their hands and do something physical. And I think that that's a great impulse. And I think that if this is being organized, if this is the way that, there will be another big flotilla, almost certainly.
You said there were over 100,000 applicants or something?
139,000 last time. Applicants.
And then there
And
were
there
about about 500 that
almost
actually
500 who ended up
on the ships.
on the ships at the end. There
Yes.
were more who dropped out on the way through.
Right.
And then there were about a little over 2,000 shore support people. I think with the massive amount of media generated, not so much in the U.S., but around the world, with this, there will be a lot of people who really want to join, and I think it's a worthwhile effort. I think it has to be paired with ever stronger economic blockades. It acts very much as as someone said to me recently, as like the freedom rides did back in the civil rights movement. They rode their buses down past the Mason-Dixon line to show the North how bad it was in the South, where people didn't fully realize how horribly their government was enacting its brutal apartheid on its own citizens. And the beatings that we received, the deprivation of basic human dignity, and
once you were detained.
Once we were detained, I think that woke a lot of people up who don't necessarily get the news when it happens to Palestinians.
So which is very true. So at what point were you detained, and what exactly happened? So how did they connect with you, and what did they do? The apartheid forces, the naval forces.
They hit us first very briefly on the night of September 30th. They came with a few unlit vessels, surface vessels, and with a submarine. And they actually knocked out the communications of a couple of our lead boats. A few people were worried that they were going to do the interception that night. I was pretty sure that they weren't, because it was already close enough to dawn. It was only a few hours before dawn, and they like to do their work in the dark at night, where the film of it isn't quite as clear, where they can use their superior optics and technology to leave us disoriented in the dark, and to provide more of a psychological warfare factor. So they waited for the full attack till the next night. We all knew it was coming at that point. We could see shortly after dusk a whole mass of ships ahead on the radar. We had calculated we'd actually slowed down during the day, because we still had the military ships from
Oh, you still had the escorts.
the escorts around us till nearly 120 miles out.
How many vessels were there?
There
escorting
were, the Greek vessel dropped off earlier. The Spanish and Italian vessels appeared to stay around. They were well off. I mean, mostly over the horizon. And the Turkish vessels, they dropped off between 150 and 120 miles
So
out.
you didn't have any communication with them.
No.
Do you know why they dropped off? Why didn't
Because they
continue?
didn't want to risk any sort of conflict, military.
So they didn't
escalation.
tell anybody to leave. They didn't warn the people on the flotilla,
The
because there was a story that they did.
The Italian government, Giorgia Meloni, she told us that we should go drop the aid off in Cyprus and to the Catholic Church, and that they would then, she would facilitate something with them, then delivering our aid to Gaza. But of course, the occupation is not allowing anything in, and the Catholic Church has no power to force them to. So we didn't accept that, of course. But that was the only piece I heard. We didn't get any direct radio communications from any ships saying turn around, except of course when the Israelis started to attack us. They blasted out of speakers and blasted on the radio that we were, breaching a lawful military blockade.
But you were still in international
We
water.
were way in international waters. I mean, the attack started, we were at least 80 miles I think about 80 miles, I'd say, 80 miles off the coast of Gaza. So we were 68 miles outside the Gaza territorial waters. Um,
So then they came in.
Came in, unlit boats, cut our communications. This is the 2 hours after sunset on the night of October 1st. They started getting these unlit high-speed military vessels with spotlights on us, whizzing through the fleet, kind of doing donuts around, almost like joyriding, shining spotlights on us. And then they turned on the water cannons. And we saw a couple of our lead ships get immediately boarded by ribs, and we saw the soldiers, swarming up the sides and shining their rifle-mounted lasers and flashlights on the passengers and crew. And then we saw, especially the sailboats, start to get blasted with these water cannons. A boat near me kind of started going out of control and nearly crashed into me a couple of times. I sped up, and I ended up pretty quickly at the head of the fleet, which I guess made them target me pretty quickly. I think I was one of the first 10 or 12 boats to get taken down. They came up behind us, shined the spotlight on us, and my crew, I actually found a video of this on Turkish media. My crew is saying, are they going to intercept us? I said, I don't think so. I think they use the ribs for that, not these bigger boats. And then
what are ribs?
Rigid inflatable boats. They're like they're like the Zodiacs, they're the super fast, low-lying ones. And all of a sudden you see the water cannon start shooting out off our stern, and my Brazilian organizer, can I swear on here?
Sure.
He just says, "Oh fuck," and that's the last thing you hear or see on the video, because it just turns into just darkness and chaos as the water blasted us.
How many soldiers came up on the vessel?
When we got hit, it was 5. 5 came on.
And what did they do? What did they do? They rerouted you, or they took you onto their
first
vessels?
they, had us, our hands were up. We were all busted up by the water cannon, and we were soaked completely through. I mean, we had some waterproofs on, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so we're all just, just shaking uncontrollably, because that seawater is cold at night. And we were all, I was dazed because I'd gotten hit in the head a few times by the water cannon, and it's so high power, you just see stars. I mean, it's like getting hit by a bat. And I had some of my female participants had some injuries, hip and back, and they were bruised up. So, we were trained very, very thoroughly in nonviolent tactics. We certainly were intending to avoid escalation at all costs. So they come and they shine that laser from the rifle right on your forehead, and you just raise your hands, and they went through and asked who was the captain, and they'd beat up and treated captains very badly in previous flotillas. So we said we can all drive the boat. We're all competent.
All captains, yeah.
We're all captains. If they had really gone after people and started hurting us, I would have stepped up, of course. But there was no need for that. Luckily, they took us below one by one, strip searched us, and took our passports, and then they locked us below. Took them a little while to figure out how to turn on the boat, how to put it in forward. They were no sailors, and then once they figured that out, they revved it up to max power. And I thought they might blow the engine by itself without even me, I was kind of thinking, what could you do if you just, turned off the coolant flow or something? But,
So then
at that point, delaying them by a little bit of time doesn't do anything either. So yeah, we just got locked below, and we kind of passed out from exhaustion, some of us. They took us to Asdod, to the port. And we saw the Madeleine and the Handala, the 2 previous
Oh, you saw them there, the vessels.
yeah, they were moored there. They took us off, processed us, put us on a prison bus. They beat my brother in front of me and handcuffed him and blindfolded him, and they had 4 guys beating on him till he fell to his knees and he was in the fetal position.
How did they beat him? They punched him, kicked him.
A lot of punches to kind of the back and the kidney area and to the back of the head, and then open-handed slaps where it's more visible.
Just walked up to him and randomly
Yeah,
started
well,
beating
he
him.
was handcuffed and blindfolded, and I was already in the general holding area on the prison vehicle. All the North Africans, I didn't get hit at all. All the North Africans who were coming in were getting, as soon as they'd turn a corner, and it seemed like they knew where the cameras were, because you could see as soon as they turned this corner, then they started pounding on these guys. And then, when they were done with them, they'd open the door and kick them in the prison bus. And when they brought my brother in, he was the only white guy that I saw them do that to in the initial part there. But they put him in a solitary compartment on the vehicle, and I was kind of.
So they have a solitary compartment.
They have like a
on the
big
bus.
compartment
On the
for like
bus.
20 seats, and then they've got like 4 or 5 maybe solitary compartments up forward. But the one we were in, there was no ventilation. They had no no power to the vehicle at all, and there was like a crack, maybe a centimeter or less under the door. That was the only air coming in. And you put 20 sweaty guys on a hot day, middle of the afternoon, and we were just dying in there. There was one guy with asthma. I thought he was going to collapse.
How long was the drive?
Well, luckily they couldn't get the vehicle started. So we sat there, I don't know how long, because I was like trying to press my lips to the crack under the door to try and get some fresh air. And all of our shirts were just sticking to us. We were just breathing the carbon dioxide that was coming out of everybody else's lungs. And I was like, I don't know if we're going to make it to the jail. But when they couldn't get it started, then they offloaded us, put us in another bus and turned the AC on. So then we were kind of freezing cold, but that's another story. But we were actually happy. We were so relieved to get into the prison cell, because at least there we could just lie down on the bunks or on the floor. There were too many of us for the bunks. I think initially there was always 8 bunks in a cell, or 8, 4 beds, 4 bunks, 8 beds. And there was always between 10 and 15 of us. So, some people slept on the floor. But
And they gave you pretty much a full Palestinian treatment, didn't they?
no, I wouldn't say that.
No?
I think, I just saw pictures come out of Kitziot on an Instagram account showing some of the Palestinian prisoners that were just released, Palestinian political prisoners or hostages. And I recognized exactly like where they were, because it's the same layout. I don't know if it was the same cell block or whatever, but it just brought the memories pouring back. But you can even just see in the pictures that they're all bent over with their hands cranked up behind their backs with a soldier,
Yeah, it was terrible. Horrible. It's horrifying scenes. Those are absolutely horrifying scenes.
And you could tell that they were under some kind of political pressure and some kind of orders to not go all out on us the same ways, because you could see their muscle memory. I mean, if you were standing by the bars of the cell, kind of peering out, looking and trying to see what's going on, a soldier would usually, as soon as they saw you, he'd come up and say, "Get back, get back," or and then if you didn't, he'd point his rifle right at your face. But they didn't fire. They didn't. I don't know if they had rubber bullets or what in those guns, but we never actually got fired upon.
So you stayed in the cell for 4 days?
For more than 5 days, yeah. The only people who got let out we got out once to see a judge with no lawyer present, and the only people apart from that who got out were the people who would be forced to serve food, which some of my cellmates were on. I was on hunger strike. My brother was on a hunger strike. Most of our cell was on hunger strike.
So you didn't eat at all?
So we didn't eat at all there but some of my friends who were on hunger strike, when the guards asked them or told them to come serve food for everybody else, they said yes. And I was like, why did you say yes? Like, I don't want to serve food to people.
Yeah.
And you're like salivating the whole time, you're shaking. And but I guess, maybe they just wanted to get out of the cell and walk around a little bit, for something else, because you're just lying there. I was just popping bubbles in the plaster with my thumbnail for for 5 days when we weren't getting busted in on with. They come in with the guns, with the dogs, with
Every
riot
day.
shields, mostly sometimes during the day, but mostly at night. Sometimes 2-3 times in the night. The first night we were there, they busted in, turned the lights on. We were all just totally disoriented. It was the first time that it happened. Get down on the ground, on the floor, on your knees, put your hands up. All in the back. We all got huddled together. We couldn't figure out why they were even coming in. Maybe. And
Well,
then
to harass you.
this little pale, pudgy guy, walks out behind him with a couple big muscly bodyguards and a bunch of cameras. And I was like, I know that face. Oh my God, that's Ben Gavir. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what in the hell is he doing here? And he had come to do his little, photo op where he's done with Dr. Barghouti.
Yeah,
done
with,
it with
right.
a
Marwan
lot of,
Marbuti, yeah.
yeah, many of the prisoners. And he comes and he's, calling us terrorists and baby killers, and we were like, just like barely trying to figure out what was going on. One of the French doctors who'd been on a mission to Gaza, who was in our cell, kind of tried to talk a little bit, but he just wants to come get his video clip and get out. So he left, and then they keep busting in. They like to do the sleep deprivation thing,
Right. With the dogs.
With the dogs, yeah.
Yeah. What was your biggest concern? What was your biggest fear?
Honestly, for the people who had underlying medical conditions, critical conditions there, the diabetics, we actually did some decent collective action. We by the end of the second day that the diabetics didn't get insulin, we said we're not doing anything they ask. We're not going to get down when they bust into our cells. We're not going to go serve food. We're not going to go to see the judge or any consul, anything, until they bring insulin. Because what they do, and this is a common thing in prisons everywhere, from my experience, you say, this person is very sick, they need insulin. And they say, yes, the doctor will be coming,
Right.
And then the next, 3 hours later, they say, oh, yes, they'll be coming. And they never do. So it took us a little while to wise up that was never going to happen. And then we just said, okay, complete non-compliance with everything. And then lo and behold, pretty quick, they brought the insulin. So that was good. But I know there were some people who had neurological conditions, and there were a couple of women, which we didn't find out about till later, who actually passed out in their cells for lack of access to medication. So that's what I was most worried about.
And eventually everybody was released and sent home.
Yeah, the people who were released first were the people from the countries who'd sent military vessels. Interestingly enough, a lot of them seemed to kind of send charter planes or figure out hire specific commercial flights for their people. And we were told actually when they all got out, and we were kind of wondering, how is this determined? Like, why are some people getting out and not others? Because it had nothing to do with who signed a form saying we'll self-deport or anything like that. It was kind of random.
Some people signed, some people didn't.
Yeah, most people didn't. People didn't. Only people who had, who were worried about their health, for example, the diabetics signed because they thought,
Because if you signed it, you were out.
That's what we thought, but it didn't work out that way.
Oh, it didn't.
And then the UK people came back from their consul visit, which was last, and they said, the UK says the only way we get out is if our country sends a plane for us. And they said they got no plans to do anything for us. And we were like, well, the US isn't going to do shit. So we were like, well, we could be here for a good long while. And it was really the international pressure from the people. I mean, I don't think those Israeli consulates and embassies had gotten flooded with so many calls for a long while.
So how did you make it to Jordan? Because you ended up being sent to Jordan, right?
They put us back on those prison vehicles. I guess they made a deal with the government of Jordan because they wanted to get us out, to give us transit visas, and they just handed us over to the Jordanian buses, there was a foreign ministry guy there at the border.
How did they treat you?
Fine. It was those jet buses, those tourist buses that the Jordanians.
So not like prisoners.
No, we got out from behind bars, and then immediately on the on the jet buses, we started up our chants again and made the Jordanian foreign ministry guy very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was freaked out. He was like
Yeah.
trying to get us to stop, but it was
And then you
satisfying to
had to buy
flip
your
off the IDF out the window as we drove away.
and then you had to buy your own ticket to get here, to get back home.
Yeah, so the U.S. consular services that came from the Israeli embassy to visit us in prison were completely useless, didn't give us any information, and actually fed us misinformation. And then the ones in Jordan acted like we were all a big headache. The lady was like, yeah, I was on my work from home day. Like, like we were just, causing her trouble. She said, we're not here to babysit you. We're just going to drive you to the airport and you got to buy a flight home. And we said, well, we got no phones. We got no credit cards. We got no cash. How are we supposed to do that? She said, well, you'll have to use somebody's phone, arrange for a Western Union transfer, do something like that. She's like, we're not here to babysit you. She said it a few times. But then we managed to borrow a phone and get in contact with the ground support people from the Global Sumud Flotilla, and they stepped up. They really
Took care of everybody.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's go back before we finish one more time to the beginning. I don't have any doubt in my mind that particularly these large armadas have a huge impact, and I don't think the test of the success is whether or not you got to Gaza. I don't think anybody has that expectation. I think the test is the impact that it's had, and there's no question it has a huge impact.
Yeah.
And perhaps I think I agree with you. If there were a few hundred vessels, it would be very difficult to intercept. And quite frankly, I think it would be a lot easier and a lot less of a headache for the apartheid state to let them in, and then they could be stuck there or whatever. So I mean, nobody can understand how their mind works. So I would say the if I understand the objective, to create an impact, the impact was there. But I think that it's not the kind of work for any activist. It's not like going to a protest. It's not even like going to a protest in Palestine where you might be arrested or beaten by the Israeli military. This is a whole different level of sacrifice and discomfort that you have to put up with once you set sail until you're on the plane back home. Yeah. It's not everybody's cut out for that. Would you agree?
My brother said one thing they have to put on the vetting form is, have you been camping for a week or more, without supply, without going back to town.
Yeah, and it's more than camping, because camping is kind of fun, and you walk around,
right.
You're on a boat, you can't get off, and then you're in a cell and you can't get out.
That's for sure. But there is a certain level of just being in a small space on a boat without access to showers, without any way to have a lot of the conveniences and luxuries of
privacy.
Life. Any
privacy.
That's a big one.
And there might be people that you don't necessarily like with you on the boat.
That's right. And many people who were very clear and said it many times that, this is nothing compared to what Gazans are going through.
Which is true, but that has nothing to do with it. But it doesn't make it any easier.
But even though they understood that intellectually, they had a really hard time kind of adjusting to the actualities of just, being salty all day in a small space and having there's a lot of work. And then, the prison amplifies all of that by 100 times.
Yeah. So anything you would want to add before we wrap this up? Anything you'd want to say?
This movement is growing rapidly. I think that one of the achievements of the level of success that this flotilla had, whether it was the big strikes, whether it was the media, whether it was actually how close we got and the difficulty that we gave to the occupation forces, has given this whole Palestine movement a level of momentum, and as we're entering a new phase with all of the uncertainty on how this so-called ceasefire is going to go, I think that there will be massive actions in the coming months, let's say, up to and including the next big flotilla, which is going to be in late March or early April.
I don't think there's any uncertainty. I think it's pretty certain that the genocide is going to commence as they said they would. So I don't think there's any
Sure.
uncertainty there.
But I think there's in terms of the how and the
how and how much, yeah.
yeah.
And just on the point of being costly, Isamra, our good friend from Hebron, always says the measure of the success, part of the measure of the success is how costly this is to the occupation. It has to be, we have to do everything we can to make it costly for them in every way that we possibly can.
That's right. And in terms of the political cost, I think this was pretty massive.
Yeah.
I think, the drone bombings woke a lot of people around the world up,
Yep.
and they paid a much bigger political cost for that than we
Yeah.
paid by losing a few boats.
Right.
In terms of the just pure financial cost, I mean, they had submarines out there. They had to call up 600 reservists. I mean, it was an expensive thing to put together the flotilla,
It's
but
very
I don't
expensive.
think there's any doubt that they paid many
lot
more shekels than we did,
Yeah.
trying to deal with us, with all the hasbara that they tried to put out. The CBS News reported that there was a leak from the U.S. intelligence that was liaising with the Israelis that confirmed that those drones that bombed us in Tunis were launched from submarines offshore, and it was directly authorized by Netanyahu. So this
They're really worried about this.
yeah,
They
they're
are
really
very
worried, and when
worried
they're
about
worried,
this.
we might
Yeah.
be onto something.
Yes,
you know?
exactly. No, absolutely. And another thing I'll say, and then we have to finish. You've been real generous with your time, and that is that it seems that the message of all these different parts of resistance to the to the apartheid state, and I don't see this as solidarity. I see it as resistance, part of the resistance. The message is being made clearer and clearer that it's about a free, liberated Palestine from the river to the sea. It's not about, ending this, that, or the other. It's about the whole thing from, systemically getting rid of the apartheid state and liberating the people of Palestine. So I think that's a big, big, big step forward.
Right.
Once again, thanks for your time. Thanks for your hard work. Proud of you. And thank you all for joining us here at Palestine House of Freedom. I'll see you next time.